A manager is not automatically a leader, and leadership is not automatically tied to rank. That is where the confusion often begins. A manager is a formal role inside a structure. Management is the machinery of coordination: planning, assigning work, tracking risk, handling dependencies, managing budgets, reporting, and keeping the larger system from falling into chaos. Leadership is something more subtle. It is the ability to create movement in people, to shape trust, direction, confidence, and belief. A leader, then, is simply a person who can do that, whether they hold a title or not. In a work context, leadership is often used as a more refined word for management, but the two should not be collapsed into one another. Management is positional. Leadership is relational. A leader can come from anywhere in the organisation. That means a team can have a manager who is excellent at structure, governance, and delivery, while the real leader in the room may be a specialist, a senior practitioner, a quiet mentor, or even a rising junior who carries unusual trust and influence. Strong organisations understand this. Weak ones confuse hierarchy with human gravity. Rank gives authority over workflow, but it does not guarantee inspiration, credibility, or followership. In many workplaces, what is praised as leadership is often just management wearing polished language. There is nothing wrong with management. It is necessary. It keeps the engine running. But it is not the same as the rare gift of leadership, which is the ability to make others want to move, build, improve, and believe. The real maturity of a management layer is shown in whether it can recognise this difference without becoming threatened by it. An insecure management culture assumes influence should belong to rank. A mature one understands that leadership must be cultivated throughout the whole organisation. That is the only real way to build a strong company while still retaining the full value of people who do not want to become managers. Many of the most valuable people in an organisation do not want a management career. They do not want endless clerical load, reporting, slide decks, approvals, status tracking, and administrative overhead. They may see management, rightly or wrongly, as sterile routine rather than living contribution. But that does not mean they lack ambition. It may mean their gifts are meant to operate in a different register. A wise organisation does not punish that difference. It creates room for influential non-managers to matter deeply. It gives weight to expertise, trust, mentorship, judgment, and initiative. It sees the natural leader without trying to force that person into a narrow managerial mould. Sometimes, good management may decide to place such a natural leader in charge of a team. That can be a wise move. But if management does that well, it will also recognise that leadership effectiveness can be crippled by forcing one person to carry every surrounding function. A natural leader may be strong in judgment, direction, trust, and influence, yet weaker in presentation polish, strategic documentation, visual storytelling, or other support disciplines. That should not disqualify them. It should signal the need for complementary support. This is one of the most overlooked marks of intelligent management. If you want a leader to lead effectively, do not burden them with every task that happens to sit nearby. Surround them with support staff, specialists, and partners who can strengthen what they are not naturally built to do. A person does not need to be exceptional at PowerPoint, vision design, policy drafting, formal reporting, or polished executive theatre in order to be the leader who can move a company forward. In fact, many organisations fail because they overvalue presentational fluency and undervalue the deeper substance of influence. The strongest systems do not insist that the leader be complete in every dimension. They design a structure in which the leader can be effective because the surrounding support is sensible. Then there is ego, which quietly poisons both management and leadership when left unchecked. At the management level, ego must be restrained because it is often what causes a person to believe rank means more than it does. A title can mean project planning at scale. It can mean coordination over larger complexity. It can mean formal accountability. But most of the time, it is not a sign of superior human worth. Much of management is routine, necessary, procedural, and sometimes stagnant. Once management starts treating administrative scope as evidence of personal greatness, it begins to lose the humility required to notice leadership in others. Then natural leaders are seen as threats instead of assets, and rank starts defending itself instead of serving the organisation. Humility is therefore essential, but not only for managers. Even when a natural leader is recognised and supported, that support must be framed from a humble perspective. Otherwise, ego will corrupt the noble. The story cannot become that one special figure is the saviour of the company. It has to remain rooted in stewardship, contribution, and service to the larger good. Management must be humble enough to sponsor leadership without trying to own it. And leaders must be supported in ways that deepen responsibility rather than vanity. The moment the arrangement becomes a theatre of status, the very thing that made the leadership powerful begins to rot. Humility keeps both sides clean. It keeps management from suffocating leadership, and leadership from becoming intoxicated by admiration. There may also be different ways of applying this in the public and private sectors. The principle remains the same, but the intent and framing may differ because the goals are not always identical. In the private sector, leadership may be cultivated more directly around performance, market movement, innovation, growth, and advantage. In the public sector, leadership may need to be framed more carefully around stewardship, continuity, trust, service, and public value. One is not automatically nobler than the other. They simply operate inside different realities of success. The approach can work in both worlds if it is carried out with the right intent. The real question is whether the organisation understands that leadership can emerge anywhere, and whether management is mature enough to cultivate it without being trapped by hierarchy, process worship, or ego. This brings us to one of the hardest practical issues. How do you cultivate these people when financial reward is locked inside job ranks and pay bands? This is where many organisations become lazy. If the salary structure cannot move, they assume the person cannot really be recognised. But people are not driven by a single mechanism. Many have very different goals in life, and a good manager learns what actually animates each person. One person may be energised by the chance to explore new studies. Another may want exposure to a difficult project. Another may want time to experiment with a new idea. Another may value trust, visibility, flexibility, or the chance to mentor others. Another may simply want to feel that their strengths are seen and used meaningfully. That is why the final mechanism should not really be framed as reward, but as incentive. Reward sounds retrospective, almost transactional, as if leadership is something to be compensated after the fact. Incentive is different. Incentive is about creating conditions that allow the person to grow, contribute, and remain energized. It is about understanding what gives them life and then opening doors in that direction. That may mean secondments, study opportunities, special projects, mentoring roles, innovation work, greater trust, cross-functional exposure, or protected time to think more deeply. It may mean giving someone room to build before their title catches up. It may mean expanding their field of significance rather than simply trying to attach a dollar value to their influence. So the piece begins and ends in the same truth. A manager is a formal role. Leadership is a practice of influence and direction. A leader is a person who can create movement in others, and that person can come from anywhere. The strongest organisations are not the ones that worship rank, but the ones that cultivate leadership at every layer, support it with humility and complementary capability, and keep ego firmly in check. And when pay structures are rigid, they do not stop there. They learn what drives their people and build the right incentives around growth, contribution, trust, and meaning. That is how leadership stays alive in an organisation, instead of being flattened into management routine.